Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. This is always a very fun project to work on. Just to give everybody some context, if you haven't joined us in our last meeting, previously, our first What You Up To Warriors focused on kind of the creative arts and the creative industry as a whole. I know it's a very general topic, but we were so lucky to speak with Drew Honda, who is a classmate of mine, and Matthew Deneef of NMG Network, which is an amazing publication company here in Hawaii. So we're really ecstatic about that. And I'm so thankful that Auntie Jackie, Auntie Dancine, and Uncle Pono were told me that we were lucky enough to do a round two. And I'm so excited that everybody was able to join on this panel discussion, because this topic was actually a topic that I am personally very unfamiliar with and want to know a little bit more about. And this came to fruition because of Cassidy, who is now my co-host for this topic. So Cassidy is going to help guide us through the conversation today with some of her expertise in the nonprofit world, and also to just ask some of our panelists some questions as well. We have Kailolu here today, and Sierra. All of them are class of 2015. So we just missed each other in high school. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists. Again, thank you so much to the Alumni Office for having us do a round two for this. So before we start, and before Cassidy can and our panelists get to introduce ourselves in old traditional Kamehameha Schools fashion, we like to start things off with a pule. So if anybody would like to unmute their mic and offer to lead us in prayer, that would be amazing. Anyone? If not, I will go ahead and do it for us. Okay, so please join us in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for bringing us all here today. Thank you so much for Bernice Paul Bishop and the Kamehameha Schools and the foundation that they have provided us for us as students and as alumni. Thank you for taking care of all of us and keeping us safe and our families and our friends well, healthy, happy, safe. Please continue to do so throughout these trying times, and please let us continue to stay connected with each other in every way, in every form possible. And please let the rest of this day go smoothly, as well as the rest of this week, this month, and this year. Thank you so much for all that you do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, so to get things started, I'm going to have Cassidy introduce herself and talk a little bit about her nonprofit experience and why she wanted to step in as our co-host today. Cassidy?
All right, thank you. So I'm Cassidy Apo, and I'm a 2015 grad. I'm super excited to be here today. Thank you so much to Auntie Jackie and everyone for helping coordinate this. Right now, I currently work with Hawaii Food and Wine Festival and Hawaii Agricultural Foundation. So they're both kind of sister nonprofits, as we have the same executive director. And a lot of what we do is we try to highlight Hawaii as a food destination, as a culinary destination, and highlight like our farmers, our local restaurants, because we do have a lot of great agriculture here. And then also connecting our farmers to our community and our school system as well. So we do a lot of trying to connect our communities together. So and then actually right after Kamehameha, I went to school in Washington at St. Martin's University, where I was there for 4 years. So that was a great experience. And I really loved Washington up there, which kind of got me interested in doing events, which worked out well because then Food and Wine Festival, like that's probably the best event you could go to for the year. So I've learned a lot so far working with them for almost 2 years now, and it's been a lot of fun. But I was really interested in having this discussion about nonprofits, whether we're going to probably go in all kinds of different directions today. But I think what's really interesting with nonprofits is that a lot of, especially for people either right out of college or right out of high school, don't necessarily see nonprofits as a career path or where you can start your career path. But I think that through nonprofits, whether you work with them directly or just volunteer with them, you can get a lot of interest, or you can kind of narrow down where your interest is and where you want to go in the future. So I'm really excited that 2 of my classmates are here today too to share their experience, because knowing them from high school, they were very involved. I think all three of us were very involved in a lot of things. So I know that they are doing great things too. And, maybe this kind of makes up for us not having our first alumni reunion this year. So we can have a mini reunion right now. But I'm really excited to be here and excited for us to all catch up today. And I'll let Kaolu go next and kind of give us her little intro.
Okay, thanks, Cass. Hello, everyone. My name is DeFries. As Cass mentioned, I graduated class of 2015 from Kamehameha and then found my way all the way across the continent in Maine, where I studied chemistry and environmental studies at Bowdoin College, and then returned home in the middle of 2019 and kind of fell into nonprofit work. So first with Hawai'i Health and Harm Reduction Center, where I'm an administrative assistant, mainly with their HIV case management team, though I did spend some time with their clinical providers, volunteering in the clinic and also with outreach on the streets, primarily in Chinatown. And then I also started coaching for Ikaika Hawaii, which was the kayaking club I paddled for during high school. Their main mission is to teach local kids water safety and various water skills, as well as water sports such as kayaking, stand-up paddling, paddle boarding, surfing, but not so much on the technical side, just for fun, with the hopes or the goal of preventative medicine and enabling environment around them to improve and better their health. And that health is a lifestyle, kind of a throwback to our lifestyle back in the day. And then I also Lōkahi, which anything to do with Native Hawaiian health, I work with their Native Hawaiian Health and Scholarship Program, also doing administrative assistant work. But I've had the opportunity to do things like really engage in discussions around Indigenous rights, primarily Native Hawaiian rights, Kanaka rights with health. So what does it look like to be an Indigenous community impacted by COVID, those kinds of things, and how do we get the resources we need to ensure that we can reduce the negative impacts of the pandemic, such as rolling out vaccinations more efficiently, or even educating and talking with community members about what the vaccines mean. So creating those kinds of relationships and also being advocates on behalf of Native Hawaiians, especially in policy and in legislation. So super awesome things that I'm very humbled and grateful to be a part of. Okay, Kawena, your turn.
Aloha, I am Sierra Kawena. You can call me either, as you, I think Cassidy calls me Sierra and Kaolu calls me Kawena, so I really don't care. My intro is a lot shorter, but I work for Waikiki Health Center. I don't have as much experience with nonprofits as these other two, but I have been working with Waikiki Health Center as a case manager at the Youth Outreach Center, which we just call YO. And at YO, I basically work with youth who are about to age out of being considered youth by the homeless administration. So basically trying to get them stabilized before they're considered adults by the system. And adults often get like a lot less support than youth do. So making sure that hopefully they can be independent by then, and if they're not, just helping them work on their path. But our program is very letting them decide what they want to do, because a lot of youth don't like programs because there's a lot of adults telling them what to do, and not necessarily listening to what they want to do or what they think is important. So that's basically what I try to do, and I'm pretty much the same age as most of the people I work with, so it's a lot easier for me to understand that they know just as much about life as I do, and they know way more about their lives than I do. So, but yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Fanny, I don't know if you want to start with any questions or.
Sure. Yeah, I was just gonna let everybody know in the kind of like the format here. It's no strict format. The style of this is very just kind of talk story like, very discussion like. I'm sure Cassidy and I will have questions for the panelists. But if anybody has any questions or would like to comment on anything, feel free to include that in the chat and we'll answer them as we go. But I have a kind of like a general initial question for all three of you because you guys work in very different sectors of nonprofit. Nonprofit is something that I feel as if a lot of people don't necessarily want to do when they're kind of going through their studies in college. It just kind of happens for people. And then they fall into this realm of nonprofit life. And it's very fascinating and something, again, that I've mentioned before, I'm just not familiar with. So I guess my first question for all three of you is, what got you started on the nonprofit path aside from just finding a job initially? Was there something that actually piqued your interest? For example, agriculture, was that something that you were always curious about? Or for example, you, Kawena, were you always interested in health and decided, I don't want to be a part of a large, private industry. I'd rather be in the nonprofit realm. Kind of guide us through that and what kind of piqued your interest in nonprofits specifically. So Cassidy, would you like to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, when I graduated from college, I was always interested in events. I was part of leadership in high school too, so that kind of sparked my event curiosity and planning events. So I was actually interviewing with another for-profit event group here at home. And that kind of fell through the summer after graduation. So for a few months, I was just kind of like waiting to see what else would show up. And luckily that I saw the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival was hiring for an events manager position actually. And I actually going in, I didn't know that they were a nonprofit. Like you were saying, I didn't even like have an idea that nonprofits, I knew they existed, but you never really know that someone's a nonprofit until you know they're a nonprofit, right? And especially just the way they operate too, like a festival you don't necessarily think is a nonprofit type of industry or would be an organization. So when I started with them, it was really interesting to see that they, in a way, do kind of operate like a for-profit industry. But there's all the back end things about like donations and getting sponsorship that categorizes them as a nonprofit. So I'm not the events manager. I'm actually the executive assistant, which is really nice too, though, because I have kind of seen what it's like in the nonprofit industry and in that world, and how, you really, for nonprofits, we really are chasing for the money a lot because that is what funds all our programs, and that's what funds all these different campaigns and ideas that we want to bring to life to help our community. And then yeah, like over the past 2 years, it's just been a great experience. I love the way that I have so many different opportunities to go out and meet different people. Like just last week, I got to go to Waianae and meet a farmer who's doing amazing things out there, and his farm is just fantastic. So I feel like through this nonprofit job, I've been able to do a lot more things and like learn a lot more in the 2 years, where it might took me a little longer in a for-profit setting, just because you kind of do have to climb the ladder a little bit more. Where here I'm kind of given the opportunity, like, oh, you want to help plan this event, just go and do it, it's okay. Even if you don't have the event manager title, I'll throw you in there and let you help out and stuff. So it's been really fun. And like, yeah, I really just been able to do so many different things that I never imagined I would be able to do. So I think that that's why I really enjoy being in the nonprofit world right now.
That's amazing. I think nonprofit work is so important, but the reason why I was so amazed by learning about your experience was because I have also worked in food festivals, and I've talked to you about this a little bit before too. Our food festival in Portland, Oregon was not a nonprofit, and they strictly made it that way because they didn't want to deal with a board, which I'm sure you all have to deal with. So that's very interesting different perspective for me, since I'm so used to kind of it just being this large collaborative group and being like, we can do whatever we want. But then for the Hawaii Food and Wine Festival, it's so community focused, and I love that. And even though I'm sure you have a lot of people to report to, it gives you that that unique perspective to really work in a very different collaborative way, which will, I'm sure, help you out in the future too as well. So that's really interesting. Thank you. Kawena, did you want to kind of touch base about your experience and how you got into the healthcare field, I guess, or in health nonprofit realm?
Sure. So actually your guess that you did in beginning this question was almost exactly right. I think a lot of it is I've been interested in health for a really long time. I was like set to apply to medical school and everything, but then I realized I really don't like Western systems of medical care for especially for Indigenous people, including Native Hawaiians. So then I kind of pivoted, and I've had a lot of experience doing research and thought I hated it until I discovered social research, which I discovered that I loved. And that's also something like I had no idea about in high school. So I think I just got a lot more into like the integration between supporting someone's like mental and social health with their physical health. And just the center that I applied to, Waikiki Health Center, does an amazing job with integrating those three things. And I know I'm very fortunate that I got placed in the location that I got placed at too, because I've talked to a lot of other people, like social workers or people in social services, and it can be really difficult. Like you mentioned with like boards and oversight and trying to do all of these things with people who aren't actually in the field, who only want to see black and white and documentation, which can be difficult. But I'm lucky that at Yo, like pretty much all of us recognize that pretty much everything is a different shade of gray. So you just figure out what's best for our clients, and then we like figure out the paperwork after instead of looking at the paperwork first. So that is something to think about for nonprofits, because there is a lot of like documentation and getting funding and all of that stuff, but it overlaps a lot with like getting funding for research, which I did a lot before. So it makes sense. And you also want to make sure you document stuff to make sure like you're not, I don't know, like mistreating people and there's no record of it. So it's like recognizing why you have oversight and making sure you're not one of the people who is screwed over like the clients in the past, which unfortunately happens a lot, especially with like people in diverse areas like Hawaii. But yeah, so I think a lot of it was just wanting to find a place where I could feel like people actually cared about what they were doing rather than just trying to get numbers. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does seem like a very intricate process to work with, but I'm sure when you feel a little bit more comfortable, you start learning all of those different things. And again, it's a skill set that you can use in the future, wherever it may take you. So that's really interesting. And also too, I want to say congratulations on your master's degree from Stanford. I thought that you received a bachelor's, but I was mistaken and saw your Instagram post, and congratulations on your master's. That is an amazing achievement. So congrats.
Thank you. I think I posted the same pictures for both because there was no actual graduation. So, but yeah.
That's amazing. Congrats. For Kaiolu, I know you mentioned that you work with the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction, but you also do work for Papa Lōkahi, which is very interesting. So I wanted to hear a little bit on your perspective on that, because it from what my understanding of Papa Lōkahi is that it's a scholarship-based program to help Native Hawaiians in the health field. But sorry if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. So could you kind of guide us through what piqued your interest into getting into that realm, and how it kind of actually interconnects with HHHR?
Sure, thanks, Fanning. So with Papa Ololokahi, I actually tried to reach out to them while I was still in college, kind of form a relationship, but whatever happened, that kind of fell through, and was able through a connection back at home to reconnect with Papa. And So the I'd say hale that I kind of fall under is the scholarship program, and that is specifically for Native Hawaiians who are pursuing education to become a health professional. So that could be nursing, that could be a physician, that could be a dietitian. I want to say there is a set list of health professions that qualify for this scholarship. And then there are the other different hale too that fall within underneath Papa Lōkahi. So they have their research hale, they have their, and I'm very new to this too, so I don't know all the details, but they have research, they have their knowledge, and research and knowledge have kind of been integrated together. They also have they're more traditional knowledge, so a lot of la'au and other indigenous or cultural things tied to that. They have their communication section too, which does a lot to, they have put out a lot of webinars recently to provide as much information as possible to our lahui. So for example, talking to different health professionals, talking to other community members who are somehow in their own ways furthering or improving the health of our people. With the Native Hawaiian Health Scholarship Program, we also have our own webinar series that talks specifically with health professionals, some who are alumni to the scholarship program, and in discussing things like what their practice is now, how they got there. But for me specifically, whatever I'm doing, I want to make sure that it's fulfilling to me and that it's purposeful. And for me, that involves making sure that I can take care of my ohana and making sure that I can take care of my lahui. Like that's my goal as far as my profession goes. So for Papa, being a part of Papa Lōkahi, those things really aligned with what their mission is in terms of serving our people and bringing our people up and making sure that we have a voice in what happens to us.
That was beautifully said. I definitely feel for a lot of the nonprofit workers that I see doing all that they can, especially in the time that we are in now. So I'm even very thankful for all the work and the research that you put forward to make sure that all that communication is out there. So thank you for all your work, especially in the health field. It's really appreciated. We do have some questions and some comments in the chat. So Leilani is asking, do any panelists know of helpful places or specific places to search for nonprofit jobs? Cassidy, do you have anything off the top of your mind that you can think of?
So what's kind of interesting with nonprofits, and I guess just the culture of Hawaii too, is that a lot of things are like who you know or word of mouth type of thing. So sometimes it's hard. That's actually how I found it too, because my dad actually knew who the executive director is of the nonprofit I work for. But one other suggestion I would have is that I know sometimes, I forget what website it is, but one website does have a list of nonprofits here in the state. And that's a really good tool too, because then you can kind of see like what each nonprofit does, or if they have any job offerings. But also I would just, honestly, Google is such an amazing tool. Like I would just, like, if you're interested in the health field and just search Hawaii nonprofits in health industry or something, I'm sure you'll find so many results of different nonprofits. Maybe it's some of the ones that these lovely ladies work for. But I'm sure something will pop up. And then, of course, nonprofits, they're always looking for volunteers too. So sometimes you just need to volunteer with them first, or just pique interest with them and ask them what exactly they need help with or what they do. And from there, hopefully they might be, later on down the road, they might be like, oh, we have a position opening up that we think you would be perfect to fill or something. So I think with nonprofits too, it does take time to kind of get to a point where you want to be. But if you just start with that initial conversation and just volunteering too, I really think that's like the best place to start and kind of look for it.
For that. Yeah, thank you so much to everybody also in the chat too who is bringing resources to us. LinkedIn is definitely a great resource. I encourage a lot of people to always make a LinkedIn page. I used to work in HR, so I knew how that heavily influenced your job search. Also, Hano, Hawaii Association of Nonprofits, so thank you to Jacob for providing those resources. Same with you, Natalie, thank you so much. Kai Olu, Kawena, do you guys have any input on where to look as well?
I agree with Cassidy. A lot of how I fell into my line of work now happened either through volunteering or connections or a combination of both. So I think the best place to start is just ask around amongst your family and friends. And really, like I said, for me, it's all about what I'm passionate about. So find a field that you're really interested in, and then go ahead and dive in deeper to really research what's out there.
And then kind of echoing what Kaiolu said, like I feel like part of it is if you know like the types of things you want to do, just trying to search for jobs like in that category, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a nonprofit because like Benny said, like there's some coalitions that aren't necessarily nonprofits and didn't like file all the paperwork for that but are doing like very similar work. But if you know you want to work like for a Native Hawaiian organization, I would say most of them are nonprofit. So like just narrowing down the search however you want to. I honestly found my job on Indeed, but my counterpart that works at a different agency, like their job isn't posted anywhere, so you could only find it if you were like looking on their site. So I think it depends a lot too on the resources that the nonprofit has and whether or not they have like a team that is dedicated towards like marketing them and recruiting and stuff. So like it is word of mouth, and it's also like a lot of people being maybe technologically challenged on marketing and things like that. So a lot of times, like if you just reach out, or if you reach out to like someone, if you have some sort of connection with someone who works there, I will say people tend to be a lot friendlier than you think they are, and willing to talk about positions and talk about like organizations that they've worked with. So not only theirs, and they're not like going to be very much like, oh, like I work for Waikiki Health, so if you ask me about any other nonprofits, like I don't want to talk to you. Like I would be happy to talk to people about Waikiki Health or like HCRC, who we also work with, or like Rise, and there's lots of other orgs, and a lot of people like if you know someone in one nonprofit in a certain field, they'll probably know a lot of the other nonprofits in that field. But yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, networking, yeah, to kind of piggyback off that, networking, the connections that you make, utilizing your families, your friends, that's so important in order to kind of really gather all the information you need to make a really good decision on where you want to be in not only just a professional field, but especially nonprofits too. You really do want to make that good decision in terms of a role. We do have a question for Kaiolu, actually. Kelsey wants to know how folks in the community are able to get access to information about La'au Lapa'au. That's a very good question. Are they having to pay for it? And also, do you already have all the plants and materials, or do people have to gather these on their own? That's a very interesting topic, especially for the situation that we're in now. Kaiolu, could you speak to that?
Mahalo for your question. So as far as I know, all of our webinars are free. I do know we record most of our webinars, so you should be able to find it online. But if I could get your contact information, I can better direct you to where those are stored. I'm assuming that no, they don't send the plants and materials to the registrants or whoever's watching the webinar, but I can get more. I really don't know, so I can get more information about this for you. I haven't sat on any of these webinars myself, but that's an awesome thing to be able to do, hopefully, and especially if we can include more people.
And I think also too, if you are comfortable leaving your contact information in the chat, or I think after this, we will also connect Cassidy, the alumni office, and I will connect to kind of follow up with everybody. to gather more contact information. So yeah, that's a great question. Thank you so much. Cassidy, did you have any questions, or did you have any topics that you want to touch base on, since we've kind of talked about some of the more general things?
Yeah. So one thing that I thought would be interesting for us to share about and to hear from the other girls is, so there's this one chef, Jose Andres. If you have time, I would highly recommend that you search him up. What he is doing is amazing. So to give you like a brief summary of what he does, he's a chef out of DC, and he created the nonprofit World Central Kitchen. And pretty much what he is doing is, him and his team travel to all the different communities who have been hit by natural disasters, or even just like any type of event that has impacted that community a lot. So I know like right now he's in Texas right now, handing out meals there. But what's kind of cool about what he does too is that when he goes to these communities, he either gets the restaurants open and have their workers make the meals for all these people, or even like when he goes to Haiti and stuff, he teaches those community members how to cook and how to prep the food and everything, so they can also take that and apply it to their community and their economy, so they can help their economy grow as well. And I think what is so great, one of my favorite quotes from him is that he always says it's not about the uplift of the charity, but it's about liberating the receiver. And I think that through nonprofits, what's really interesting is that I think with any type of job you have, you always want to give back to the community, but especially with nonprofits, there's always like a special tie to either a certain program that the nonprofit does, or a certain thing or idea in someone's community that kind of inspires that person to keep working with that nonprofit or get involved with that nonprofit. So what I thought would be interesting to hear, and you probably mentioned some of it already, but what has inspired you to help your community or better your community? And I think what will be interesting too is, especially during the past year with COVID and everything, either if you had new inspirations or like new ideas that you were like, this is why I'm doing this job and this is why I'm working with these people. So like, what's inspired you to help your community or better your community since you started with your nonprofit? I don't know, Kaiola, do you want to go first if you have something in mind?
Sure. So kind of going back to my whole reason for what I do, a lot of it has to do with my cultural worldviews. So being raised primarily in Hawaiian culture, you understand that there's a connection to everything, and it's a reciprocal connection. And so a lot of that guided me through my academic, or at least college, post-secondary career, as far as wanting to look more closely at the intersection between humans' health and the environment. And that actually helped to guide my research with chemistry and environmental studies, looking at how pharmaceuticals persist in the environment after going through wastewater treatment plants. And so if those things are still present in our environment, what is it doing to our health? That sort of thing. And when I came home after having done that research, and even throughout college, I could see how my upbringing and education, part at Kamehameha, but also at Bowdoin, at college, really helped to bring out these issues that we face today in Hawaii, such as the dredging of the Alawai Canal, or various military bases and the remnants that they leave, like the naval storage tanks of, I believe, fuel in Red Hill. And what is that doing to our water? Or even the diverting water through through various ditches to then irrigate plantations, and how that changed and impacted Native Hawaiian health, as far as it took a lifestyle away from us. And we were no longer able to rely on our staple, which was kalo. So those things really shaped what I wanted to learn about. And then what I wanted to work on in my professional career. So sorry, Cass, can you repeat? Can you? I tend to go off tangents. You're gonna have to rein me in.
No, that's perfect. That's totally fine. But I think you kind of answered too, like what inspires you to help your community, and it doesn't necessarily have to be through the nonprofit, but what's inspired you?
Yeah.
To
So
just
that is a lot of what motivates me to do what I do, and a lot of that stems back to, you know, family and my upbringing, and just this idea of giving back and allowing our Lāhui to really prosper and thrive.
Yes, that's great. And like kind of what you mentioned too about all the different issues happening in our community as well. Like nonprofits do serve as a voice for the community as well. So yeah, there are a lot of different things. What about you, Kawena? What inspired you to help your community?
I don't know. So I've always liked doing stuff, like volunteer stuff, and it was always just something I enjoyed doing, and it's something like my family, like a lot of the women in my family do, and I guess some of the men, but most of the women. But I think like one of the reasons why I ended up like going into it more as a career is partially because with everything for like being really interested in medicine for so long, like I just met so many people who were very like jaded and worked down by systems, and who were like very good people who started their job because they wanted to help someone but didn't feel like they could do it as well. So wanting to get more into like work where you could help other people and also feel like fulfilled and like you're being listened to, which I feel like is more common in nonprofits, because at least the other people you work with for the most part are well intentioned, and you don't have like insurance companies like telling you what to do and things like that. And I would say like a big reason why I like doing work like this, like whether it's with my job now or just in general, is because that is the type of person I like talking to. Like I like talking to people who care about other people and who can see like the world in a very complex way, or see like other people in a complex way, and don't aren't super judgmental of other people, especially if like nobody knows anybody's full stories. Like most people don't even necessarily know their own full story. So I think just a lot of it was like it was just the type of people that I like being around, and yeah.
Thanks. Well, I'll just to share a little bit. What's inspired me to help my community is recently I've been learning a lot more about our agriculture here in Hawaii, and how it actually is really difficult for a lot of local farmers to keep their farm going, just because one of the land use and how the farming land that's available, there's not a lot of acreage that farmers can grow on, for many different reasons, but also that sometimes it is difficult for them to get their produce or get their goods to local stores or local restaurants. So there's kind of a disconnect between the two. But I think that we're slowly making progress in that direction of having more of our local farmers and their products in the restaurants. But it's just been really interesting to see firsthand how that's all working and what that's like, because we always talk about it and we always hear about it and see articles about it, but I don't think you truly really know or understand what it's like on the farmer side, especially until you see it firsthand and you actually get out there. So it's been great. I've had a chance to see some farms and what their stories are like and the impact that they've had, especially during COVID too. So that was really interesting, and that was like, it's just all so fascinating to me. Like, it's definitely new to me. I think we do have some questions coming in that we can talk about. So one of the questions is, have any of you considered working with foundations because of the work that you have done or are doing? I don't know if Sarah or Kaolu want to take that one first.
I can try. A lot of A lot of what I do just kind of I tend to go where my passions and interests lead me. So it's not like, oh, I need a job because of like this is the type of work I want to do. It's more like I'm really interested in this. What kind of aligns with it? And I guess that's a fine line to draw, but no, it's more the interests and passions that I have had led me to where I work versus the other way around.
Yeah. So I guess to double check, so is the question asking like if we've considered like or if we chose the place based on the work we are doing, or if we want to work with some like a board or something other than.
So I can clarify that. What I'm thinking about is because of the research that you folks are doing, there are particular foundations that are on not like your mainstream foundations. These are foundations looking to look after marginalized populations. And so I have found as a trustee on a foundation that we have gained a lot from people like yourselves who have done the deep research, and it has enlightened our board. We're a family foundation, so it's small. But I have learned so much because of the research that's been done and because the people came from nonprofits like yourselves. So that's all I'm saying.
So actually, sorry if I can answer really quick, Sarah, if you want to think about it. But so mine might be a little different because a lot of the foundations we work with, so like before, nonprofits were always chasing for the money to fund our programs. So along with our sponsorships, especially on our Hawaii Agricultural Foundation side, we work a lot with like personal foundations, like whether it's like a couple who has a foundation under their name or like a family foundation. And sometimes they they have like grants available for different nonprofits, and you have to apply for the grant. If you get the grant, you have to like follow what you put in your grant proposal and everything. And then most times we usually have like end of a program report that we have to give them. So what's interesting, what I've noticed from my side is that a lot of times the people in these foundations, because it is kind of smaller foundations, they want to help the community and they want to give back to the community. They just might not necessarily know how or what the best route is. And that's where our program kind of comes into play, is that if they can fund our program, they have this idea that they want to, for example, get ag education into the public schools. So they can fund one of our programs where we have a ag education program that we do for maybe like grade 4 public school students or something. And usually the feedback that we get from them after we give them that final report is that they are amazed at the work we did, but also they never realized all the different factors that go into it, or the different roadblocks that might be there. So it's interesting to see and hear their feedback, because they are really grateful for what we're doing, but also a lot of the general public doesn't necessarily know about all the little small details, which when it comes to, I think when it comes to a lot of the work we do, it is about those smaller details that matter. But I found great joy in like sharing what we do with these foundations, and even the people I meet, and they're like, oh, I work with this foundation. And that's kind of where the networking part comes in, because then maybe I can mention one of the programs we do, and then hopefully they can share that on, and then they'll be like, oh, maybe we should fund this program too. Like that would be a good program to fund. So it's great to share what we do with these foundations, so hopefully they're inspired to, and then hopefully they can keep helping us in the future. I don't know if you had anything to add to, or even if you wanted to add more, Kaiolu, to your first answer.
I guess for me, I'm definitely the newest one in this, like doing this field, like as a long-term professional job. So I think mine is like down the road, it would be really cool to get more involved with them. But I also feel like I'm still very much in a place where I'm like learning a lot and relearning the resources we have here because I've been away for basically 5 years. Um, but yeah, but then there's the whole like you should be confident in what you already know and everyone has something to share. And I don't know. But yeah, I think it is like something that would be cool to get more involved with because that is also something like we also get a lot of funding from foundations, especially for random things that come up that youth want, like I don't know, like stamps so that they can mail things to their boyfriend in jail, like things like that. That it's not something you're gonna like think of and write down on a grant proposal. But yeah, so like being able to figure out stuff like that is something that I have been doing similar work for a long time, and I would definitely be interested in continuing it and hoping to do that near the end of the grant that I'm getting paid by right now. But yeah.
I think we have another question in the chat as well. So, do you see nonprofits as a way or a model for everyday people to have agency over their lives? And her example is, I'm thinking of the grassroots work that made voting happen in the last election. So, from my perspective, I think that with the work, well, with the work that I do, I have really been inspired to just really share more about all the different things where I get to work on and share more about the issues that I've noticed or I see come across the work I do. So I think it was Civil Beat. They started that Hawai'i grown section where they've been talking a lot about the different like food securities in Hawaii and also like the beef industry issues that have been coming up. So to me, being able to share that through the work I do, or even if I'm just like catching up with friends like this or talking with friends at dinner or something, I think that's where I feel like a part of me is being fulfilled, or a part of what I want to do in life is being fulfilled, is kind of bringing that community awareness about different issues happening in Hawaii. Because especially in such a digital age too, you really don't know what's happening unless, you know, you're just like scrolling through Instagram or something and this random article pops up about whatever you might be talking about. And also it's so targeted to what you want to see and what your interests are. So to me, I feel like if I'm being able to spread the word about things, even if it's just a little like 10-minute conversation with someone, to me that's fulfilling to me in my life. And you know, we're making it more aware to our community about these different issues that are happening. And it's probably going to take a long time until we get to like a final destination or where I think we'll be in a good place. But you have to start the conversation somewhere, and that's kind of how I feel like that's fulfilling to my life. Like I can start that conversation for people through the work I'm doing as well, which is great. But Kyle, did you want to add on anything? And then Sierra too.
It's a very complicated question. I think as far as nonprofits go, I do think they, like Cass said, allow us a voice, and that speaks directly to issues in the community. But having also worked, I interned at Wilson Okamoto, which is a civil engineering company, and they're in the private sector. And I worked with their planning department, so I did a lot of draft environmental assessments and environmental impact statements. And so seeing how they operate and also the kinds of things they're building in the community, like they were very involved with various traffic projects, bridges, buildings, like the new UH dorm that got built recently. So from my experience in both the private sector and the nonprofit sector, my understanding is there needs to be a balance between both and a good relationship between both so that they can each hold each other accountable in order to better serve communities. Like in my mind, the goal of a nonprofit is the community, and the goal of the private sector should be the community, though that's not always the case. And if they can bring those two, if they can align their mission so that it serves the community, then that would be great.
I guess from my perspective, as like nonprofits can definitely be a way for people to either learn how to get agency over their own lives or to like directly get it, because a lot of nonprofits like do focus on teaching people the skills that the nonprofit may have experts in and the people in the community don't have access to in any other way. The whole point of our youth center is to ideally be teaching like the youth who come in skills so that they can ideally like have a better future for themselves where they are like permanently and stably housed and have healthy relationships and a lot of other things like that. As far as a model for everyday people, I think like you can learn a lot from anything in life, any profession, and not necessarily just nonprofits, because every nonprofit is very different, and you'll have some that maybe don't necessarily like even nonprofits who might not care about the community as much as their mission statement says that they do. But yeah, so I think a lot of it would be like trying to see the good lessons in like most of the interactions that we have, whether or not it is like a positive thing that happens or like, yeah, this is maybe how I shouldn't do things, or like the way this person is doing this like is not the way that I want to do it when I go forward. But yeah.
And I think we have another question in the chat, which I think is really interesting. How do we encourage people to donate or contribute to nonprofits? Because like we mentioned before, many nonprofits depend on grants and contributions and government grants as well. And Hawaii ranks as the lowest in the nation in regard to charitable giving. So how do we change that? And just speaking, excuse me, from my experience, because I don't know if Kaolu and Sarah, if you guys work a lot with the contributions and giving as well with your nonprofits, but what's been really interesting in the last year is this, they did a study or a survey, I think it was, that it was actually the nation in general, this was one of the highest years that a lot of nonprofits received funding. And I think it's because of all the great work that nonprofits did throughout the year to help their communities, especially during COVID. And what I noticed too is that it really is, like I mentioned earlier, it really is word of mouth, or like if you hear something that impacts you personally or you feel attached to, that's kind of what's gonna encourage you to donate to that nonprofit or give back with that nonprofit. And like personally, like I just saw a news article the other day about this one nonprofit on Big Island who was making meals for their community. I think it was in Hilo, and I only read the first few sentences of the article, and I was like already looking up their website to donate some money to them, because to me, like I know how difficult it is, especially on the outer islands, because some of them do have a little harder restrictions than we do right now. But for a lot of their families too, a lot of them are still out of jobs, still trying to figure out what they're going to do, how to get food on the table. And that kind of just pulled with me. But I really think that we as nonprofits across the state, we just have to keep getting our message out there. I mean, that's really the plain and simple way that we can keep encouraging our community members to support us and to help us, because there are so many nonprofits here too that a lot of people probably don't know of, but it probably will pull at like the heartstrings of a lot of people and connect with a lot of people. I think it's great that, you know, we have younger people like us who are fresh out of college working with these nonprofits, and feel really connected to what we're doing, because I think, I mean, just the way Kyle and Sarah talk about their work too, you can tell that they're very passionate about it and really want to help Hawaii in general. So making sure we start those conversations like this. And like, also I think this would be a great time too if you guys want to do like a little pitch for your nonprofit and then hopefully get some donations after this.
Yeah, absolutely. If you all could, you know, drop links to your nonprofits too, that would be amazing. That way, I think everybody here today could take a look into the work that you all do specifically. But yeah, that is an amazing question. I think it's a great question. It's nice to know that, you know, the country as a whole, or America as a whole, is really taking a look and leaning on the support of nonprofits to help the community, because it really is. I mean, we have seen so much happen to the country within such a short time frame. So many different types of movements, so many different types of things regarding politics and government, and you know, which way we're leaning with that, and without getting too much into it. And then also too, the thing that greatly impacted us the most in our everyday lives was COVID. So that's great to know that America as a whole is really donating. I do see that, you know, Jacob pointed out that Hawaii does rank low, which is very interesting, because for me, I feel like Hawaii is very community based. You know, we lean on each other to support each other in every way possible, because we have this value of ohana, you know, something that it's been instilled in us since we have just basically been born. So that's very interesting to me, to see the comparisons between Hawaii and America as a whole, and where we kind of stand. And also to see with the work that you are currently working on, to help kind of bring us up into an area in terms of charitable giving that meets also where America's at. So
I would say, sorry. Yeah, on that point, I think part of it might also be like, just this is from like a researcher's perspective, but I'm guessing part of it is also the way that they define charitable giving. Because I will say, at least in my experience with Hawaii in general, but also with my nonprofit, is Hawaii has a lot of informal giving. So people not wanting like tax write-offs for it, people not like necessarily putting their names down, but just going and dropping stuff off, people giving things to family members for free or for a lot cheaper, or giving it to like friends of family members that they don't even necessarily know. We have a lot of homeless youth that if they have, I don't know, like a shirt that they don't want anymore, they'll just give it to one of their friends, which is not something that is going to get like actually recorded being done, and nobody is ever going to see that on like a tax thing. Because I also Hawaii is also one of the less financially literate states, which might also be part of it, that people just aren't recording the fact that they're giving. And I also don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to not be recording that you're giving all the time. But yeah, like I think part of it is, I think Kelsey mentioned in the chat, like social media is something that I think a lot of nonprofits here struggle with. And part of that is like funding to have someone in charge of social media is difficult. And then a lot of the people in charge of nonprofits, as amazing as they are older people who don't necessarily see either the value in social media or don't understand social media, which is something that, like the program that I work with is a brand new program that we're creating from scratch, and having those conversations with some of the people higher up who are the people who figure out funding and all of that stuff has been very interesting. And like teaching them the differences between like, no, if it's public, like that doesn't mean everyone can see if you follow the page. Like that's all, you can choose to not follow the page and still interact with it and things like that. But yeah, so I do think like having some of that more like financial literacy and a lot more of the actual like learning how like about technology and things like that would probably help with funding a lot here. But yeah.
Yeah, and I thought one thing I thought about too when you're saying that, Kawena, was that especially in Hawaii, we just like to help people out. You know, I feel like that's just how we are, and that's how we grown up. Is that if you see someone who needs help, you're just gonna help them. So sometimes, and like maybe that's where the disconnect is that a lot of people just want to be hands-on and help these nonprofits or volunteer at these nonprofits, and they might not necessarily think about the money side of it. But yeah, it's very interesting. There's many different paths you can go through, but yeah, social media too is such the thing right now. Like that's all of it. that's the way to go marketing wise and everything. So yeah, sharing social media is a great great path to go. I think Kaolu had some tech issues. She just texted me saying she's logging back on, but no worries. But I think that, yeah, it's been so great hearing what you guys have been doing and sharing. And I think kind of just talking, since, you know, we are all Kamehameha people here, just thinking about like your time in high school and your time there, what has, how has that prepped you for even going through college and getting to this point of trying to figure out your career path? Like how has your experience at Kamehameha really helped you navigate through the past 5 years away from home?
So part of this is, so again, learning from maybe not the most positive things that happened, but I think our graduating class in particular got a lot of the faculty didn't really like our year, and that led to a lot of issues with like faculty either like stereotyping students before they even got into the class, and a lot of complaining about stuff like that, which can make stuff hard. So like that was a big thing of me like getting, just how I mentioned, like I like nonprofits because I like the people that are around me, but a lot of it is like I don't really like judgmental people, and that was like a big thing that kept happening to our year, like from, I remember literally from like 6th grade. So it was that was like one of the things, but also like Kamehameha is such an amazing place that they have so many resources if you look for them, and just realizing like that was also something to keep in mind, that it's okay to ask for help or to ask for money if someone like literally is looking for someone to give it to, and someone who actually like is going to spend it in a way that they think would be helpful. So like Kamehameha helped like pay for some of my college and a lot of things like that. So it is like an amazing resource if you know where to look, and just remembering that like it is very fortunate that we were able to go there and to be connected and surrounded by Hawaiian people, which is something that a lot of other people don't get. And that was also something that I realized a lot. Like I knew in college, or like I knew before going to college that that was true, and I knew before going to college that not everyone gets that experience. And as much as people make fun of like Hawaiian kids at Kamehameha for it being like a very Western school, it's still like being surrounded by mostly Hawaiian people is going to just be a very Hawaiian space. So I think realizing that like not everyone had that fortune, and recognizing that like other people might need more support and more validation in the fact that they are whatever identities that they grew up with, whether or not they were able to connect with it, especially when it comes in terms of like indigeneity and how there's a lot of blood quantum and like expectations like that, which I think Kamehameha helped me prepare a lot for that.
Nice. Yes, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. Kaolu, we were just talking about what your experience at Kamehameha in high school was like, and how that has kind of helped you navigate the past few years through college, and then like where you are now with your work.
Yes, sorry I jumped off. I think the biggest thing Kamehameha did for me was really instill my identity as a Hawaiian, as Kanakamami, like what that means, and knowing that no matter what, I would always have that identity, no matter where I was in the world. So I found myself having to lean back on that a lot throughout college, especially having gone to the whitest state in the nation and the farthest possible state away from home. Any farther, I joke, I'd be in the ocean. So, for example, when people, well, first of all, when people would hear my name, they'd be like, I'm sorry, can you say that again? So just that became very normalized for me over the course of the 4 years I spent at Bowdoin. And at first I was taken aback by that, because at Kamehameha, like, I just say my name was Kaiola, and they like it was a very natural thing, right? We're used to hearing our language. But now it was almost like going to school in another country, where I had to code switch all the time. And I never noticed that at Kamehameha. But I came back, I think the first time I came back for a break, my family's like, you sound different. Why are you talking like that? And then that's kind of when I realized, like, wow, you know, the way I speak here is very different from how I would speak in an academic setting with my professors, which is different from how I'd speak with friends outside of the class, which is how different from how I'd speak with family here at home. And so regardless of how I had to navigate those cultural and social differences, I always knew who I was and the values that I identified with. And I think it wasn't always evident at Kamehameha, but the foundation was there. And when I missed home a lot, I would remember things like song contests and the traditions that we had, to just kind of ease my like homesickness being so far away from home. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing Kamehameha did for me.
Great. Just about my experience, I went to a small Catholic school. My college was a small Catholic school. And really, I just went for sports, and that's like all I was thinking about my first 2 years. And then it kind of shifted into me getting more involved with the campus. And what was really interesting about my campus was I remember when my freshman year, when I would tell people that I went to a school where you had to be Hawaiian to get in, they just like could not comprehend it. They were like, how does that work? Like, how can you just be a school with only Hawaiian people going there? And then, you know, you get into the whole conversation about, oh, we had a princess and her will, and da da da, and they still don't comprehend that. But as the years went on, and by my senior year, I noticed how diverse our campus was and how people felt a lot more comfortable speaking about, one, their culture, and two, like who they are and what they identify with, and the person that they want to be. And I think that what through high school, what has helped me was that, you know, we're all different. All the people in our class are different. We all have different interests, but we all have this one connection that we're Hawaiian, and that's like where our foundation is. We're coming from these Hawaiian values, and that's what we've grown up knowing and what we want to keep in our life. And it was interesting knowing that. I think it was easy for me to kind of connect with people in college and meet other people because they also had this culture identity that was special to them, but they just didn't know how to express that since they also were in a new environment. And as the years went on, it was great to just see people so outspoken about who they were, and like they weren't ashamed to be like, oh, I'm Hawaiian. This is who I am. Because I think too, when we come from somewhere where we're so comfortable being Hawaiian, and then we go to this unknown territory, it's kind of hard to us to still be like, I'm Hawaiian, but I know you don't want to hear about that, so I'm just going to keep it to myself. So it's good for me because I was still able to keep my ground of being a proud Hawaiian and the values I've learned, and I kept close to my heart when I was in school. And I think it also helped me kind of help other people too. Like, it's okay for you to be outspoken about this one thing, even if half of the people in this class don't agree with you. Like, you can't, you know, you kind of have to find that even balance, but at the same time, like, if that's who you are and that's what you identify as, people can't hold you back for that. I mean, that's who you are, and you're gonna say what you feel like is on your heart and what you want to say. And I think that through high school too, we weren't necessarily told that directly, but we all kind of knew that in order to stand our ground, we do have to say who we are and what we think and what we want to be known for and what our culture is about. So it is very different going back and forth all the time. But there was a lot of things I learned. I'm really happy to be home, and I'm sure the two of you are happy to be home as well. But it was, yeah, it's a great experience. And then maybe if anyone else has other questions too that they want to ask, that they can put in the chat as well. But I think that one question we can maybe kind of help wrap up it with this as well, is especially for our younger alumni, and then I know like we'll be posting this later as well, so this would be good to share. But what advice would you give to either students who are just graduating, or even like some of our younger alumni who might be wrapping up the college or getting halfway through college? What advice would you give them looking into their future and going forward?
I did a lot of work with actually helping people with that transition, and one of the biggest thing that comes up is like, it's okay to not have like an exact plan of what you're doing, and if you are one of the like people who does have a plan of what you want to do, like it's also okay if it doesn't go exactly according to that plan. And a lot of it will be like view after high school as at least the first few years as a time to like explore a bunch of different things, because Kamehameha does teach you a lot, but it's like there's a whole world outside of like that little Hawaiian bubble up on a hill. So there's like so many other things, and like you can pivot, or like you can, even if you know you're interested in a certain field, like that field probably has way more different careers than you can possibly imagine. So just keeping that in mind, and then also not being afraid to reach out to people who are in like careers that you're interested in, and just talking to them about it, because like with us in this panel, like most people are open to talking about themselves, the things that they've been doing, and like and a lot of people, especially if they are in like fields that they want to give back, or if they see someone similar to them, so whether that's just the only thing you have in common is an interest, or whether it's like, oh, like you're another Native Hawaiian who wants to go into this field, or you're another woman who wants to go into this field, or anything like that, like reaching out is always fine. And like maybe someone won't answer you, maybe someone will say no, but then all you have to do is like reach out to someone else. And like I've never had an experience with myself or any of the students that I helped of someone replying like, you're stupid, you shouldn't go into this field, don't talk to me ever again. Like that's not going to happen. So it's okay to talk to people. And if you're not comfortable with like talking over the phone or something, like you can always ask questions in an email, or if they're comfortable like just answering like written questions and things like that. But yeah.
Yep. Everything Kawena said, I completely agree with, and at some point along my pathway, I've kind of done myself. I think I just add that the one thing you should try to figure out though is what is important to you as you progress through college or through your education. Like what do you want to be doing that is fulfilling to you as a person, and then is that in alignment with your values and your mission in life?
Yes, I agree with both of you 100%. I do think that, especially as a senior, whether you're in high school or college, there is a lot of pressure on you to kind of have your life figured out by the time you graduate. But that's just not how life works. Like, there's so many different scenarios, there's so many different opportunities that are out there that you might not know of. So really, like, whatever comes, take it. Whatever you see, even if it sparks a little interest, as long as you try it. I mean, who knows? You might only have like a really small interest in it, and then you go volunteer with them or something, and then all of a sudden you're like, "This is what I want to do." So you never know what's gonna happen. That was the biggest thing I took away from my senior year of college too, is that you really never know what's gonna happen, and there's no set plan that you can just write down and follow all the time.
I agree with everything that was said here. In our last panel discussion, we asked the same question, and Drew and Matthew said the same thing. They said, take advantage of the resources that you have there while you can. The world that Kamehameha is a beautiful one, and it provides so much opportunity to us And every single day I look back and I think back on my time there, and I'm very, very thankful for not only Bernice Pawahi Bishop and what she stood for, but the people that you come across at Kamehameha, you know, your classmates, the upperclassmen or the underclassmen. It becomes this huge networking device for you in the long run, because you establish friendships, you establish future colleagues, in these relationships that you cherish for the rest of your life. So, you know, the way that it has impacted us here today, like today, the work that you're all doing is truly amazing, and it's very thought provoking. It's very uplifting. It goes back to everything that we learned at the school. You know, the values of respect and family and caring about one another, and what you eventually want to do for your community. You don't really realize that in the moment, because you're trying to get all your coursework done and you're doing like 3,000 extracurricular activities and then practicing for song contests. But, you know, by the time that that's all almost done with, you kind of sit there in your senior year and you realize, wow, I just had the most beautiful experience, and I shared it with 450 other people, that when we walk away from this, we will come back one day and get to talk about what we're doing now and reconnect as if we never left. So I agree with everything that you all said too. And Matthew and Drew said the same thing too. They were really appreciative of their time at Kamehameha. And I think things like this, that where we can, you know, come together now, especially in a digital age, we're so lucky to be able to connect via webcams and, you know, text messaging and social media, that we are able to talk about our experiences this way and show it off to not only other alumni, but to the world too. So just my 2 cents. Thank you again for even coming to the panel today. I appreciate all your support, and thank you so much, Cassidy, for being my co-host today. You did an amazing job.
I try. But yes, it was great to catch up with both of you. We'll do a little talking to see if anyone else has any other questions. But yes, it was great to see you both. It's great that we can catch up and hear what everyone's doing. And yeah, like Diane said, it really feels like we're just picking up right after graduation, and like it hasn't been 5 years since we last seen each other. But yes, thank you both for joining us. Thank you everyone too for your comments and your questions. It's great to hear that you guys are as invested in our community and want to learn more about our community as we are. But yeah, and if you guys have any other questions too, even after this, I think Auntie Jackie too, we can probably figure out a way to get those questions from you guys, and then we can disperse it to Kyle and Kawena as well if you had specific questions to them.
We'll leave the chat open maybe for a couple more minutes, see if anybody has any questions. I'll ask one last question that's on my mind, that I did ask Matthew and Drew, which is kind of just a fun question for everybody that's on the panel. What was the one thing that you missed when you left Kamehameha?
There's so many.
It is hard to narrow it down, but I think when I was conversing with Matthew and Drew, it finally caught my attention what I missed the most. And I think right when I was starting college and I knew college was expensive, I missed free printing. Free printing from Midkiff. It was like one of the greatest joys that we probably just took for granted while we were there. It was like, I need to get something done, free printing. There you go.
Oh, that's a good one, actually. Yes, free printing. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much it is in college, actually.
Expensive, yeah, really expensive in college. And then I forget the name of the little like project area in Midkiff, but oh my gosh, that was amazing. It was like a little art studio. It was amazing.
I think the thing I miss most, this is like the sports person in me, but I do really miss our track team, our 2015 track team. And actually, Kyle them know, but Kason Smith, I was just talking to him about it because we're both coaching track too. But our track group since freshman year, we're such a tight group. Like we were so tight knit, and like we just all wanted to win and have everyone be successful, that, you know, we fooled around a lot, and like the coaches probably hated us all 4 years we were there, but like we just had such a great time, and like everyone was equally successful because we all like helped each other out and stuff. And I really missed that bond, because I did do track in college. It's very different because although track is an individual sport, it is a team sport still, because you can have your team, you want to get points for your team. But in college, I felt like everyone was all about themselves. They really just want to win, be number one. Doesn't matter how the rest of the team does. So I do really miss my track teammates from high school.
Yeah, I love the camaraderie with everything that you did at the school too. I was in concert glee, I did theater, I did swimming, but there was always a sense of like a sub community in anything that you did. You always had friends and family supporting you, which was nice. So
Kind of similar to what you said, like what kept coming to my head was my water polo team that I was with. I was in water polo from 7th grade, so having that and like the view when you get out of the pool at the end of practice and like the sun is setting and you can see it from the mountain is so beautiful. And then I guess it's not super like Kamehameha specific, but also Hawaii specific, like the fact that I live so close to all of my friends, and like maybe Waianae feels really far from like Kaneohe, but like Waianae is a lot closer than like New York. So it was like nice having all of my friends like within like driving distance, or where we could meet up, and like we could carpool home from practice. We could like, I don't know, like go to the beach and meet up, and like even the fact that you could go to the beach after school, or even for some practices, and or go hiking and such, like on pretty safe hikes in like a beautiful place. Or even like, I don't know, again, like being the people, and just like the fact that Kamehameha I feel like is one of the best schools at making people feel really connected to Hawaii, whether or not like you're thinking about it consciously. But I have friends who went to other schools in Hawaii, including other private schools, that it was very much like, yes, I have to get a good career, and that can be anywhere, versus like Kamehameha has a lot more like, you're Hawaiian, so you should be here, which is like has, I guess, two sides, but I really appreciated it. But yeah.
absolutely, I agree with that too.
I was thinking a lot about the Terry burgers.
Yes, those were so good.
Adam, I think you missed it because they had transitioned to a different company by the time, we got up to what, junior year. But on a more serious note, I missed singing Hawaiian choral music with Hawaiians. Like, that was such a huge, and you talk about the unifying factor, that was so big. And chicken skin every time, and then to have to move away from that was like, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I was living in Portland, and it was my first two song contests out of being a senior. Like our class swept. I was so excited. I didn't even know how to communicate it to my colleagues and to my friends there in Portland. Like, this is the biggest night of the year for us as students, and it's like one of the most beautiful feelings to all hear your note, and then like silence, and then you sing this amazing song. And despite whether you win or not, that feeling of singing a song that you have worked so hard to learn and to understand and to cherish and love, and that you will carry on into the future, is just like one of the most beautiful things. Song contest, I think, is just an amazing competition that I wish the entire world could see, because it's absolutely beautiful. So I agree. Song contest is definitely one of them too. And the Terry burgers, I agree with you 100% on that. Okay, well, we don't have any other additional questions in the chat today. So again, thank you so much to all the people who logged in today to speak with us about nonprofits. Thank you so much, Kaiolu. Thank you so much, Kawena, for being panelists. I truly appreciate taking the time out of your busy day to be here and to chat. Cassidy, again, thank you so much for bringing this topic to our attention. It's very important to our Lahui. It's important to discuss this so that future alumni, current alumni, and the entire, the world can learn a little bit more about what Kamehameha are doing in the sense of nonprofit. So thank you so much for being my co-host today.
Sorry, this is super random, but if the person who was asking about La'au Lapa'au is still here, feel free to message me also, because I did, or not I did, I'm part of Mono Medics, so I can also help connect you with people if you want really in-depth knowledge about La'au Lapa'au. And then also at Waikiki Health, we have some free services if you would like to receive La'au Lapa'au and not necessarily learn about it. So both sides of the spectrum, but yeah.
Yes, and feel free to email us at the alumni office email. Feel free to follow on Instagram, DM there, and then we can connect you with all the panelists today to answer your questions more thoroughly, to connect you to their nonprofits. We're happy to assist in any way possible, even after this conversation ends today. So. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing all the amazing work that you continue to do for the community. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you much. Take care.